They called at 2:17 a.m., both of them yelling into the speaker like the sound itself was currency. "Jules," my mother said, too loud, too practiced, "your brother is in the hospital. You need to wire $15,000 right now, or he's going to suffer all night and get stuck with everything." I stared at the ceiling in the dark, letting that familiar spike of panic rise, then watching it fail to catch, like an old hook finally dulled. "Call your perfect little princess," I said. Then I ended the call. Phone off, no scrolling, no bargaining, just darkness folding back around me as if it had been waiting to reclaim the room. By sunrise, light spilled across my windows in Denver, and the quiet felt almost illegal, like I'd stolen it. I brewed coffee and watched the steam climb, expecting guilt to show up, panting, ready to vault onto my chest. It didn't. Let me be blunt, because this story doesn't stay tidy. My name is Jules Hart, 32, structural engineer, one-bedroom apartment near Cherry Creek, clean countertops, hard-earned calm. I'm the oldest child, which in my family was less a birth order and more a job title. My parents, Gary and Nadine, raised me on a doctrine older than the shrinking ranch house we came up in on the edge of North Las Vegas. The firstborn carries the family. My brother Mason, 26, was the son, the one whose mistakes were phases. My sister Tessa, 23, was the princess, the one whose tears could rewrite reality. I was the gravity holding their orbits. I paid for Mason's tuition at UNLV $28,000, a wire transfer that made my hands shake over the keyboard. He dropped out because the campus vibe was off. I co-signed Tessa's white Wrangler and watched $480 evaporate from every paycheck like it was a subscription I couldn't cancel. When their credit cards combusted $9,000 on games and clothes and whatever else was necessary, I covered it quietly before my alarm went off, because that's what fixers do. You don't wait to be asked. You preempt the disaster. You become the system. I added it all up, once tuition, Jeep, debt patches, emergency cash, just this once wires, and the number came out 6 figures. Easy. The thank yous arrived as emojis. Hearts, prayer hands, a crying face with sparkles. Gratitude reduced to stickers. I told myself moving to Denver would cure it. 8 years proved me wrong. The requests simply rerouted through apps. Distance didn't break the pattern. It just made it more efficient. Guilt traveled faster than air conditioning. At 8:41 a.m., I turned my phone back on. Unknown number. South Lake Tahoe Police Department, the voicemail said. "This is Officer." The name was clipped by a cough, then continued. "Please call me back as soon as possible regarding an incident involving Mason Hart." My coffee tasted like pennies. 2 months earlier, the fuse had lit in our family group chat. Mason announced a reset weekend in Tahoe with his buddy Griffin Hale, whose dad owned half the strip malls in Clark County. Tessa chimed in seconds later. She'd tag along for content, followed by a wink emoji like it was a harmless joke. My mother texted that they'd only helped a tiny bit. Translation, envelopes from pensions, no questions asked. I watched the trip unfold like a reality show I hadn't auditioned for. Private terminal selfies, glossy jet cabin tours that didn't match anyone's tax bracket, check-in at a 2-bedroom suite with windows gulping lake light, Griffin boomeranged champagne, Tessa filmed herself in mirrors with tags still dangling, Mason tossed $100 chips with the bright delight of a toddler feeding koi, and I felt something old and sour climb my throat, the sense that I was being positioned again as the invisible sponsor of other people's fun. When the feed stuttered, uploaded, deleted, reposted my mother's 2:17 call made perfect sense. Except this time, I didn't move. The officer called again before I finished rinsing my mug. "Miss Hart." His voice was calm, professional, with the kind of bluntness that didn't bother dressing itself up. "This is Officer Ramirez, South Lake Tahoe PD. You're listed as emergency contact for Mason Hart." I didn't correct him that emergency contact in my family was code for designated payer. "What happened?" I asked, because my body still wanted details the way it used to want permission. There was a pause, paper shifting, a keyboard click. Your brother assaulted a casino supervisor. The supervisor required stitches. There's an additional concern involving attempted fraud. Mr. Hart tried to open a line of credit using a counterfeit Colorado driver's license with your former address. My stomach didn't drop. It just went hollow, like someone had scooped out the part of me that used to leap. Charges include felony assault, felony fraud, and identity theft, Ramirez continued. Bail is set at $8,000. The hospital is requesting an additional $6,000 deposit before they proceed. With certain, he stopped as if trying to locate a polite word for consequences. Services. We were told you might be able to arrange funds. There it was. The pitch. Delivered with a badge instead of my mother's breathy panic. I'm not his bank, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Call my parents. We did, Ramirez replied. They're en route from Reno, but they asked if you could... No, I said cleanly. I won't be wiring anything. Silence. Then a careful exhale on the other end. Understood. I'll note that. If you change your mind, I won't. I ended the call. The quiet after felt like pressure in my ears. Not peaceful, yet more like standing in a room where the furniture has been removed, and you suddenly notice the echo of your own breathing. I set my phone down. My hands were trembling. Not from fear for Mason, though a thin thread of that still existed, stubborn as a weed, but from the simple shock of refusal. My body had been trained to sprint toward disasters. Saying no was like slamming my foot onto the brake at high speed. A notification popped up anyway, as if the universe liked piling on. Tessa is alive now. I tapped it before I could talk myself out of it. There she was outside an ER entrance, mascara streaked into black rivers, hair somehow still glossy. She had that practiced angle chin down, eyes up that made her look small and harmed. Behind her, the sliding doors whooshed open and shut with indifferent rhythm. It's literally the worst night of my life, she sobbed, to however many strangers were watching. My brother is in so much pain and my sister... She swallowed, like the sentence itself tasted bitter. My sister won't help. My name sat in the caption, tagged bright blue like a target. Comments rolled in, fast and ruthless. Your sister is evil. Family is family. She's probably rich if she lives in Denver. Drop her at, start a GoFundMe. And right there, like a magic trick, it appeared. A link. Help Mason with medical bills and legal support. My inbox began to fill. At first it was friends of friends, distant cousins, people I hadn't spoken to since high school, all wearing their concerns like a badge. Just do the right thing. Imagine if it was you. You make good money, don't you? God sees. My mother's texts came in clusters, as if volume could substitute for logic. Please, Jules, he is your brother. Don't do this to us. Are you happy if he dies? It's on you. Then my father called. The background roar made it sound like he was in an airport. We're at the gate, he said, voice scraped raw. Listen, just take a loan, okay? We'll pay you back. We have to get him out. I pictured him pacing with his jaw tight, my mother clutching her phone like a weapon, both of them rehearsing the same story they'd told me at 2:17. How much did he lose? I asked, because suddenly I didn't care about the hospital script. I cared about the truth beneath it. My father hesitated, long enough to be an answer. Gary, I said, using his name like a lockpick. How much? A breath. Then in a smaller voice. He's been gambling for years. The words landed with a dull thud, not a shock, more like confirmation of something I'd refused to name. We refinanced the house, he admitted. Twice. We thought one big win would fix it. And you want me to be the third refinance, I said. It's not like that, he insisted too fast. He just needs a chance. I looked around my apartment, my clean counters, my quiet, my life I'd built on the assumption that adulthood meant safety. I realized how much of it had been purchased with my own compliance. No, I said, not angry, not dramatic, just final. I'm done. On the other end of the line, my father made a sound like grief swallowing pride. Then he said, so you're really doing this. What he meant was, so you're really choosing yourself. Yes, I replied. And for the first time, the word didn't taste like poison. By midweek, consequences started arriving like mail that had been forwarded too many times, creased, inevitable, addressed to everyone. The foreclosure notice hit the county site first. A cousin sent me a screenshot like it was proof of betrayal instead of proof of math. My mother left a voicemail that swung between weeping and rage, as if she could still find the frequency that made me obey. "After everything we've done for you," she hissed at the end, voice turning sharp. "You think you're better than us." I didn't call back. I let the message sit there, an artifact from the old world. The GoFundMe ballooned for a day, then stalled. Sympathy has a short half-life online. The comments that had crowned Tessa a tragic heroine began to curdle into suspicion once people realized help meant cash with no plan. Brands quietly disappeared from her bio. A few days later, she posted a vague story about protecting her peace and turned off replies. Mason took a plea. The charges get shaved down the way they often do when someone decides to cooperate and a family scrapes together what it can. Felony fraud reduced, 90 days at a state facility, mandatory counseling, a list of conditions that read like a contract he'd sign with fingers crossed behind his back. I never heard his voice, not once. I did, however, get emails from debt collectors I'd never met, calls from numbers with unfamiliar area codes, one certified letter that referenced an account I hadn't opened. The counterfeit license with my old address had done its work. It had pointed the mess in my direction like a compass needle, so I treated it like an engineering problem, not a moral one. I froze my credit, filed an identity theft report, changed passwords, locked down everything that had ever been connected to my name and a childhood belief that family equals access. Each step felt both petty and holy. Then I did the thing that would have been unthinkable in the old doctrine. I moved for myself, not as punishment, not to prove a point, just because I could. I signed a lease in Reno, a clean little place with bright windows and no history lodged in the walls. I packed boxes alone, labeling them with a kind of care I'd never offered my own life before. Kitchen, books, tools. The word tools made me laugh, because that's what I'd been in my family. Useful, picked up when needed, set down when not. When my phone lit up with family numbers, I blocked them. When an aunt tried to reach me through email, I blocked that too. It wasn't dramatic. It was maintenance, like sealing a crack before water gets in. Silence gathered slowly, the way fresh laundry smell fills a room, clean, unfamiliar, a little too bright at first. A week after I moved, one last letter found me, forwarded from my Denver address. My name on the envelope looked like it belonged to someone else. Inside was a Polaroid. Me at 6, gap-toothed, grinning in a plastic kiddie pool, sunburned shoulders, hair in crooked pigtails. On the white border my mother had written, in a careful pen, "We're sorry." No signature, no details, no admission, just 2 words meant to function as a key. I held the photo for a long time. I could feel the old reflex: forgive, fix, return. I could practically hear my mother's voice explaining how stressed they'd been, how hard it all was, how Mason was trying, how Tessa was sensitive, how I was strong enough to handle it. I walked to the kitchen, opened the recycling bin, and slid the Polaroid in like a quiet verdict. That night, I am grocery store cake on my balcony with 2 friends who knew how to sit without demanding anything from me. Reno stretched out under a soft violet sky, the lights below like scattered coins I didn't have to pick up. My phone stayed dark, no sirens, no pleading, no hooks. And in the space where guilt used to live, there was air. I understood it then fully. Finally, boundaries weren't cruel. They were oxygen. And I had spent my whole life holding my breath,